I didn't even flinch when my mother's voice cracked across the table. "You can't just cut us out, Daniel," she said, eyes wet, but her nails still perfectly manicured. "We're family." I watched my father stir his coffee, slow, deliberate, like he was mixing poison. My brother sat slouched, scrolling his phone, pretending he wasn't the reason we were all here. The legal documents sat between us, a thin stack of paper worth more than anything they'd ever touched. My company, my life's work. They wanted in. I smiled. Just a thin, controlled curve of my lips. They had no idea they were already too late. It wasn't always like this. When I was 16, I spent summers hauling crates in our family's corner store. My father worked the register. My mother kept the books, and my brother, 3 years older, spent most of his time networking, which usually meant drinking with friends in the alley. Back then, I thought we were a unit, poor but tight. My parents made sure I understood that family meant sacrifice. I believed them. The store was our anchor. Every dent in the counter, every creak in the floorboards was a part of us. My parents used to say, "One day this will be yours." They never said they meant my brother. The day it happened, I was working a double shift at my first tech job. I came home to find the store empty, shelves stripped, lights off, a closed sign hanging limp in the window. My parents were in the kitchen, grinning like lottery winners. They'd sold it just like that. "For your brother's business," my mother said as if she were announcing my engagement. "He's got this great idea, mobile car washes. He just needs startup capital. $120,000. Everything they'd built, everything I thought we'd inherit equally." I asked why they didn't talk to me first. My father said, "You have your own career, Daniel. You'll be fine." That was the first fracture. But the real break came 2 years later when I learned the truth. The business collapsed within 9 months. The money was gone. My brother had nothing to show for it except debt and a DUI. My parents never mentioned it, never apologized. Instead, they started asking about my company, the startup I'd built from scratch, the one making headlines, the one pulling in real revenue. At first it was harmless questions, then hints. Then one night my father said, "You should bring us in. Family should benefit from family." That's when I knew they weren't done taking. I could have said no outright. But no isn't enough for people like them. They take no as an invitation to try harder, push deeper, manipulate softer. So, I didn't push back. I didn't warn them. I smiled. I told them they were right. Family should benefit from family. I let them think they were winning. For 6 months, I kept careful notes of every conversation. I watched how they operated, how my mother softened her voice when she asked about my shareholders, how my father framed advice as demands, how my brother tried to charm my COO into lunch meetings. I gave them just enough information to keep them invested. Not in my company, just in the idea that I was naive enough to be played. Meanwhile, I rewrote my company bylaws quietly, legally, in airtight language my parents wouldn't understand if they tried. I created clauses about conflict of interest, moral turpitude, and disqualification of shareholders who had unresolved debts for criminal records. Guess who fit both categories? The next move was bait. I invited them to partner on a small project, one that required them to invest. They jumped. My brother wired over $5,000 he didn't have, pulled from a credit card. My parents dipped into their dwindling retirement. I sent them contracts that looked straightforward but carried clauses binding them to full financial disclosure. Bank statements, tax returns, everything. When those documents landed in my inbox, I saw everything I needed. Overdrawn accounts, tax liens, a gambling withdrawal from my father's account that matched the timing of his business trip to Vegas. I didn't confront them. I documented. I let the paper trail grow fat and irrefutable. The final step was timing. I waited until the quarterly board meeting, a public recorded setting where every word would be on record. That's where I announced a mandatory shareholder compliance review. It took less than 10 minutes for my legal counsel to outline the violations. My parents and brother were officially ineligible to hold shares now or ever. I'd given them a seat at the table just to pull the chair out from under them. Which brings us back to the cafe, to the documents between us. My mother's eyes were glassy now, not from sadness, but from realizing the trap had already closed. "This is our legacy too," she said, her voice tightening. "No," I said, sliding the papers toward them. "The store was your legacy. You sold it. This," I tapped the contract, "is mine." My father's jaw tensed. "You're making a mistake." "I'm making sure you can't," I said. My brother finally looked up from his phone, confusion knitting his brow. "You really won't help us?" I leaned in. "Help? You sold the only thing that tied us together to fund your failure. Then you came for what I built. You don't need help. You need consequences." The cafe was silent except for the hiss of the espresso machine. I stood, left a 20 for my coffee, and walked out. None of them followed. That was 2 years ago. They're broke now. The retirement's gone. My brother's on his third big idea, living in a rental he can't afford. My parents stopped calling after I ignored their last Christmas card, the one with a handwritten note asking for a small loan until things turn around. Do I feel guilty? No. I feel clean like the air after a storm. Family is supposed to be a shelter. Mine was a storm I had to survive. They taught me about sacrifice, just not in the way they intended. And I taught them something too. When you burn the bridge to someone who can swim, don't be surprised when they don't drown.